everybody, to the Paranormal Rangers. We are in the moment trying to get Jonathan Dover on. He somehow did not get a link to join us, so I'm going to be sending that. But Stan, I'm going to have you start the show. Tell us what's been going on, and let me send this link to him.
Sure. So, for me, recently, I was able to travel to McMinnville, Oregon, up near Portland, Oregon, recently, and participated in the McMiniman's 2025 UFO Festival, which was wonderful. There was a lot of really exciting speakers, um, and so I really enjoyed that. I did travel up there by driving from Gallup, New Mexico, all the way up to the Portland, Oregon area, and then on return, traveled down the California coast part ways and came to the redwood forest and then to Napa Valley area and then back home. So I had a really enjoyable scenic tour, uh, traveling by myself. So I had a really good time. And then I had maybe a day or two in between there and packed up and traveled to Toronto, Canada area with Michelle and John Dover and went up there to visit Judy Sackney in the Sackney Art Bigfoot event up there, which was it was really nice to meet with a lot of different people and discuss a lot of topics related to the Sasquatch or Bigfoot or their version of that, and to actually go out in the field with those personnel and it was exciting, very beautiful trip, you know. Um, so this is the second time Michelle, John, and I traveled up there to conduct presentations and to be a part of their celebration and event. Their view is that this is a healing event and ceremony in relation to the Bigfoot. Very positive event, you know, very spiritual, and I really enjoyed visiting with those people. So, yeah.
Thank you, Stan. And John should be joining us here shortly. But let's get on with it. Our title today is Canadian Weird Stuff. And more on the lighter side is, what are the weird things about Canada? Well, they buy their milk in milk bags and not cartons and jugs like we do. And because this is usually in the case of the Eastern Canada, that's the way they just felt like the milk does better in bags. The other one is I got to try it is poutine. Poutine, I think that's it's a popular dish and it's from Quebec. And it's a bunch of French fries with cheese on it and gravy. And we got those at Costco. And Judy says, "Hey, let's try poutine." So those of us who were in her car, we were driving a lot back and forth from Toronto to the reserve, and that'll be an interesting thing we'll talk about on this show. We stopped off at Costco and we had a hot dog and we had to try the poutine. So that was another weird thing about Canada. The other one is the maple syrup maker. In South America, there's Pablo Escobar. In the USA, there's Al Capone. And then in Canada, the maple syrup cartel. So yeah, that's an interesting one. That's a little bit bizarre. So that's kind of, and the other things is there are beaver tails. Canada is extremely cold. There's ketchup chips. There's beans and maple syrup. The Canadian healthcare system is very different from ours, and I don't want to go into that because I could get it political a little bit. There's lots of the moose population is the highest population in the world. So yeah, so we weren't able to see the moose, but there are other things we saw. And the seasons are extremely cold and bitter, and the temperature doesn't. Well, I asked Judy today in a phone call. I said, "Do you ever get up to 100 degrees?" She says, "Occasionally, but for the most part, those are the weird things about Canada." What do you think are the weird things for Canada, Stanley, as you
Well,
experienced
as
it?
you mentioned, we didn't see any moose, but we did get to eat some moose while
That's
we were
right.
there.
That's
So
right.
that was a new experience. And John and I, we've traveled about uh, places like Scotland, and I've eaten haggis there, and I enjoyed it. And so I'm open to different cultures, cuisine, and so it
Mhm.
was it was a unique and enjoyable experience. Um, as far as weird, um, I for me, even though I didn't have any overt paranormal experiences during our visit there, there were people around me that did have experiences that were uh, very, very, uh, I
Gifted.
wouldn't say extreme, but uh,
Mhm.
they were there and very obvious to them. And but I also, in my time as a paranormal investigator and working with John and different people, I know that in some instances you'll have individuals having a very almost traumatic and overt experience right in front of their face, and others that can be standing inches away from them aren't able to tune in or experience those phenomena. So for me, even though there wasn't things that were very obvious to me as far as paranormal supernatural, there were other people that appeared to be having these experiences. So, but I think no matter where you go around the globe, whether it's
Mhm.
Scotland or Canada or other places, uh, there are these phenomenon that happen, whether it's Bigfoot or UFOs or orbs, shapeshifters, all of these different types of phenomenon that happen globally. I mean, it's not exclusive to one region or one location around the globe. So, um,
But
so
wait,
John
John
and
was
I are open to, and
yeah.
yourself, to traveling to these other locations and experiencing what it is that other people do have as far as experiences. So
Hey,
anyway, I
John.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah,
Hello, everybody.
it was a lot of fun. As you had said something about the weird, some people, um, like you said, had more experiences, and we had done an investigation in the evening, and I was not expected to see what I saw. And we were in our campsite near a beautiful on Black River, which is the Chippewa Nation, which is the Ojibwe, one and the same. That's my nation. And it was really an interesting investigation. There was a camera guy with us, and somebody had some heat sensing equipment, things like that. But sometimes, and I spoke to Judy about this, that sometimes our spiritual eyes can see things that our natural eyes don't. And I was just sitting there kind of in a lawn chair on a bench. I can't remember what it was. And then I saw this little dark figure come from behind a tree and go like this and come back. And Judy said, I about dropped my flashlight, and it was just how you see kids playing hide and seek.
Right.
It was kind of like that. And but the extraordinary thing were the little twinkling lights that we saw. I don't know if you guys caught that, but that's what I saw. And and of course it's an investigation, so some people may see it right in front of your nose and some people may not. And
True.
what was so extraordinary though, the people who did see things, they are used to this, and they're used to whatever their, I guess the tracking skills that they have.
Right.
And Judy and I spoke about that, the spiritual side today. And there is a spiritual side if they're
There
interdimensional.
is. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, John. Nice to see you.
Hello. Yeah, my computer decided it needed to do an update before I
Oh,
could get
gee.
on, and my lighting, my camera, everything wouldn't work until
Oh,
I did the update.
oh,
So
a glitch,
so
a tech glitch.
here I am. Um, I hope I don't rain on anybody's parade here. Um, I have some thoughts. We went to this deal. We had a group of people out looking for Bigfoot, and unfortunately, I didn't see anything. The twinkling lights, I do know that they have fireflies in this area because we saw them in Toronto last year, and we saw them in a big tree or brush, and we actually went up there to look at them. So I do know that they have fireflies. And a lot of times they'll come out just at certain times if it's not raining or the temperature is just right. Um, I did see people reacting, and I immediately went forward to investigate up close. And I did not see any physical evidence that anything had been there, even though everybody was adamant that Bigfoot was by a picnic table, and underneath it there was wet grass there, and there was no marks in the grass. And if anything heavy would have been there, then it should have left a print. It should have left some disturbance. Um, so, I came to the conclusion based on what I saw and the reactions of various people that I met that
Excuse me.
Bless you.
it would seem that when people get excited about something, they want to see something, uh, they they get a hit in their brain of dopamine.
Mm-hmm.
Dopamine is extremely addictive. This is what you get when you're into drugs, when you're into alcohol. Your brain is looking for that hit again, that same hit that it got the first time. And so some people, and this is just speculation on my
Mm-hmm.
part, and I hope I'm not offending too many people out there, but what I saw was one person start screaming, there it is, I see it. Then the next person, oh yeah, yeah, I see it too. And then it just like it caught on fire. And suddenly everybody is staring, everybody's trying to see what they're seeing. And I didn't see it. I was looking with thermal camera. I did not see anything. I recorded it. I went back over the recordings. I did not see anything. Um, I went up to the site itself. There were no marks, there were no tracks. And it occurred to me that if there is communication happening with extra or intraterrestrials from other dimensions, that maybe we're given just a glance at them and we get excited about it and we take one baby step forward to achieve that first step, and then it ends, and then we try to repeat that first baby step over and over and over again, and we never take that second step. I think sometimes that we need to get away from the emotion and and get to where the facts are. And you don't have to announce it to everybody. You know, you see it. Now, Michelle, I know you can see things that I cannot. You're what they call an intuitive, and you can actually sense things and see things that other people cannot. That's a gift. Uh, I'm not in that respect. So I don't see things. And you know, I always talk about the UFOs that I used to see all the time. And then I put a dash cam up because I was kind of getting ticked off because uh, I had so many missing time things that happened to me, about 5 of them, and I was getting upset because when it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you're trying to get home, and you don't get home. You spend another half hour on the road from 5 miles away.
Excuse me.
It's, it gets you upset. And when I put that dash cam in, all the sightings disappeared. This is about 2010, and I haven't had a sighting since.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm okay with that. You know, there's people out there that would chop their arm off to be able to see a UFO.
I know.
And,
I get what you're saying.
and I've seen so many different, every single type that you can imagine. I've probably seen close. The closest I've gotten to one was about 200 yards, and you know, I'm not there to say, oh yeah, I was abducted, although people have told me you probably were. And I have no desire for a regression hypnosis to find out. All I know is that they quit showing themselves to me when I put a camera up. And, you know, I don't have missing time anymore, or at least not that I know of. So, you know, I'm wondering if maybe the lesson is that we're being told, hey, okay, you took a baby step, take another
Mm-hmm.
step. There's more to learn, there's more
Mm-hmm.
to understand, but we don't get out of that baby step infancy. And we're just consumed with the idea that I want the feeling. And so, anyway, that's my 2 cents.
No, and I thank you for that. You know, it's really interesting. You guys didn't know this. We did another investigation the following day during the daytime, and Judy was in front of me, and she told me to look down, and I looked down, and there was a big footprint. She goes, "Don't say anything." She goes, "This is a sacred time," and what we did in Santa Fe with Dwayne was similar, and she did not want. She was more walking the spiritual path that day, and I asked her why, and she says, "Because I have a lesson to teach you." Do you remember the feather off my cowboy hat fell off?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, she found that feather because she was told in her mind that today she was going to be gifted a feather. And so it was kind of a spiritual journey for both of us. And then she showed me the structures because she's learning these tracking techniques from somebody who's very close to her, a woman who actually involves herself with the Bigfoot. And she says, "I'm going to teach you these." And she was showing me all the structures. And she says, "I just feel today that I don't want to make this scientific. I want to make this spiritual." And since then, her and I have talked, and I have learned some lessons from that. And I said, "You know, Judy, I was going to give you a gift." And I showed you the bag I got from Colombia to give to you so you could put your stuff in it. And Spirit told me, "Don't give her that. She really loves the environment. She loves feathers. She loves nature." And I told her it prevented me from giving her the gift I was going to give her. So I want to give her a leather. Already told her I want to give you a leather pouch so that you can put your sacred feathers in there. And I learned a great lesson that sometimes our journey isn't about scientific methodology. It is the spiritual path, and that's the path she's on. And so when I saw the Bigfoot, I go, okay, how do I not say anything? But I wanted to respect her ways as well, being a medicine woman, right? That she is. So there are those spiritual journeys amongst the Native American community that sometimes we just don't need to know. And that was a lesson she taught me while we were there. And I was just like getting really excited because I wanted to say, hey, everybody, we have a Bigfoot print over here. She didn't want that. She didn't want that acknowledged. And I have, it's her thing. And I respected that. So she said I could share that story.
Well, with indigenous peoples, um, we um, we go beyond seeing simply with our eyes.
Mm-hmm.
We see with our mind and our heart, and we know that's a part of our culture
Mm-hmm.
to see more of what is there through other senses besides visually seeing things. In modern science, yeah, we want photographs of it and be able to measure it
Right.
and all those kind of things. And John and I and you have seen in places like the Sherman Ranch up in Vernal, Utah, where the approach is to take, you know, traditionally was purely scientific method to measure these phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
And through several purchases of that property, different entities have taken different approaches to look at these things beyond that photographic and or scientific, and just like John and I coming from a law enforcement background, applying those specific criminal investigation techniques and methods to paranormal phenomenon, and a lot of times it don't work, it don't correlate. And me and John
Mm-hmm.
found that early on. We had to reach out to organizations like MUFON and Bigelow Aerospace, to uh, take a different approach to some of these investigations and some of these phenomena. And so a lot of times you do have to step back uh, and not dismiss what it is that people are conveying that they're experiencing. It's just like what John said, with you being sensitive or intuitive to these kind of things. We know that, and 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 there are other peoples that were there that are kind of some from that same vein.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you just kind of have to be, open-minded with these kind of things. John and I, again, like coming from our law enforcement background, and we want things that are measurable and can, but and I know there's trying to fit a Bigfoot into handcuffs or next cuffs probably isn't always going to work. So
No,
anyway,
no,
you have to
no.
take a different approach. Anyway, yeah,
Especially
that's
when
fine.
they're interdimensional.
Yeah,
That would be a story to tell, wouldn't it?
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it go ahead, John.
yeah, I was going to say, even they are not um, avatars. They are not something that's a will o' the wisp, so to speak. In almost every case that we've been able to track them, and I when I was there, I ran some of the trails in spite of the Canadian Air Force that was out in, ready to carry me off into the woods. I had, I got to tell this story. I was wearing a jacket with the knit cuff sleeves, and I pulled my jacket up over my hand so that the mosquitoes would quit biting me. And I had
Uh-huh.
a net on, and I kept feeling something itching on my fingers. And so I pulled my fingers out, and there were three mosquitoes sitting on my knuckles, just merrily eating away.
Munching
I think
away.
I probably left a pint of blood over there
All we
with all
did,
those
all of us
mosquitoes.
did.
Um, but I was running those trails with the ahead of people with the
Mm-hmm.
specific idea of tracking, and I covered a lot of ground. I did not pick up any tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I picked up human tracks. I picked up, a family that had been walking through there. Um, I did see one track that looked like it could have been a large track, but it was smudged and old. And when I looked at it, when you find a track, you look for the next track. There should be another track within 5 feet of that first track if it's a Bigfoot. There was no such other track. So, those are kind of referred to in archaeological parlance as an IO, an isolated occurrence. And you can't actually put anything onto that and say this is definitive. Um, that's how archaeology works. That's how law enforcement works when you're tracking, especially when you're combat tracking. That other footprint, and you're looking not for footprints, you're looking for pebbles that are pushed down into the soil
Mm-hmm.
that could indicate that something was there. You're looking at pressure marks on the soil if it's more hard packed. So you're looking at a whole range of things, and I did not see a second track. Although I did follow kids' tracks all over the place. Um, but that's why I kind of broke off from the group and went down some other trails. So I personally did not see any evidence, although the one that really intrigued me was a few days later when we were at the Conex container camp.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a couple of people had gone out, and they heard something, a deep guttural growl come from the underbrush, and it was brushy around there. And I have never seen two guys run so fast in my life. And I was laughing because I told him, I says, just remember, you only have to be faster than the slowest guy in the group.
That's right.
And
That's
and
right.
so they came in, boy, they were breathing heavy and like, oh my God, oh my God. And so that's when I thought of the title for this, show, which was OMG, Canada. Um,
Weird stuff.
yeah, weird stuff, definitely.
Eh?
You have the Wendigo up there, eh? And
Uh-huh.
and had I known there were that many lakes around there, I probably would have snuck my fly rod along with me.
Yeah.
Um, but boy, what a place! Just full of game life everywhere.
It was
That
beautiful. Yeah.
what they encountered could have been a mountain lion or a cougar by their standard. Yeah, I think that's what they refer to it as. Me and Stan have been tracked by a cougar before, so
Not
and
the
we didn't.
two-legged kind,
Yeah, we never
four-legged kind.
we never saw it, but we knew it was above us on a trail.
You
That's
know,
an eerie feeling.
it is an eerie feeling. John, what you didn't talk about at the yurt camp, I call it the yurt, Black River camp. Our producer, Warren, who was the camera guy at the same time, had a bunch of coyotes come around his camp, and no one else had tracks around theirs. And he and I investigated that. I took photos. There were little paw print. They only circled his yurt. That was it. And Wiley caught a picture of a raccoon. No one saw these.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I
Did you?
went out like John on my own, and I did observe the tracks there, and the scat, and so yeah, I did witness that, and in that particular area, you would expect to see
Yeah.
that would be consistent with that particular region. So yeah, very,
Yeah,
very,
but what was really interesting is I had just gone in to his yurt. You guys had not showed up at the camp, and I never heard any dogs, never heard any coyotes coyoting, whatever you call the howling, nothing. And he said that they were howling so loud that it was just overbearing. It scared him. Well, he was, he was a little bit concerned. I wouldn't say he was frightened, but he was concerned to step out of the yurt. And he knew I was roaming around going to the restroom. He goes, I am shocked, Michelle, that you did not see them. He said, there was a pack. No, never did. I said, but when I got to my yurt, Tracy and she was the lady that was part of our tour here. We thought at first it was an owl coming across the river there because we were right on the river. And it was definitely what the recordings that Mike Patterson has recorded. It was that sound. Yeah. And she and I looked at each other and she goes, I think they're talking to us. And it was very distinct that night. And I never said anything to anybody, but she goes, let's keep it to ourselves. Because she's very spiritual too, being Cree and comes from another tribe in the First Nations. But certainly people had their experiences, whether with animal life or with, Bigfoot. That's who we were looking for. And so I can't deny my experience. I can only share the experience,
Yeah, let me put in a quick plug for her. Her name is Tracy Bone, and she has a couple of albums out. She plays guitar and she sings. And boy, if you want to hear some good singing, go to Apple Music, look up Tracy Bone and find some of her albums. And we got our own private tiny desk concert.
It was awesome.
While we were there. It was amazing.
I'll have her on the show, John. Let's have her on the show. Have her do a sing song. I'll request it of her and then have her come.
Yeah, that would probably be good. It'd be a change of pace.
It would.
So the other thing that happened, for everybody's information, is that when we arrived at the Black River camp and we set up in our yurt, the yurt is kind of like a canvas on the outside, octagonal structure, and it has felt on the inside. So you really don't want to have any open flames. Otherwise, you'll burn your house down from the inside out. And in the middle where the the smoke hole traditionally is, they had it covered with a big dome of plastic. Now, that dome wasn't airtight. It wasn't really secured because the next night Stan was laying there looking up at the top, and he was watching mosquitoes come into the tent through that the edge of that dome, and then they'd form up and attack us. So but when you guys first got there, I was so tired. I got in my bag and I went to sleep. Stan and Michelle ended up looking up through this plastic dome that was clear and saw a triangle craft hovering above the yurt. So, and both of them identified it and exclaimed about it. And of course, when I sleep, I sleep. So, I mean, you're talking to the guy that slept through the 6.6 Silmar earthquake in California. So I was dead to the world. I never woke up, never bothered. And they told me about it the next day.
Oh, yeah, that was me. And in fact, Judy and I just laughed. She goes, Michelle, you saw it. I saw it. Stan, you saw it. I said, yeah, Judy, but I was so tired. I'm like, yeah, Judy, I see these all the time. Let me go to sleep.
I figured it didn't let me see it because it thought I had my camera on.
Yeah, had your cams in the back. Gentlemen, I've got to jump off. I've got a family obligation, but it was great to be on and talk about the weird stuff in Canada, but I'm sure you can handle the rest. So
We'll
we'll,
try.
we'll
You
try.
be safe and have fun.
I will. I will. All right, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, and we're back. Um, Along with some of that weird stuff, we also have stories of the Wendigo that are prevalent in that area, along with the northeastern seaboard. So the Wendigo is another shapeshifter, and he appears as a deer. They said he's so ravenously hungry that he's actually eaten his own lips off. And so all you see is teeth in the front of this deer head with these massive antlers. And it's been a native tradition for a long, long time that these things have existed. And other people have seen them. And this is just one iteration of this phenomenon that we just call shapeshifters. Navajo has its own brand of it. Most Indian tribes have some version of a shapeshifter. So, Stan, do you know anything more about the Wendigo than I do?
Well, you mentioned other locations that have a version of these shape-shifting forms, and I don't, for me, in my experiences and with shape-shifting and shapeshifters, that um, you can't really pigeonhole these things into one little neat little box, simply because technically, if you go back to the stories of that are rooted in lycanthropy and werewolves and even Bram Stoker's Dracula, these things are
Yeah,
references to shapeshifting, the ability
Aborigines. Yeah,
to shift from a human form into that of some type of animal. And so, I don't think it can be pigeonholed into one. I think various cultures have their own versions of these things, and especially indigenous peoples. And I know uh, that you can go out to places like Canyon de Chelly and other locations within this region and see the pictographs and petroglyphs that might have images that can be interpreted as some form of shape shifting or things of that nature. So it's very interesting, and I don't think it can be ruled out. Um, with different things, it's like orbs and Bigfoot. I mean, no matter where you go around the globe, there's probably a version of it there with people seeing these kind of things.
yeah. It was just really, I guess, fun to be in a different environment. We couldn't get over how green everything was. We live in the desert. There's you can see 15, 20 miles easy, and if you get up on a high point, you can see for literally 100 miles. And to be over there where just the forest is surrounding you, you're in the middle of what could best be described as a jungle, and the brush is thick and the mosquitoes are plentiful, and all kinds of bird life and bats and everything else. Just an amazing place. Um, but getting back to my earlier comment, I think that a lot of this intuitive seeing things is a personal, something very personal, and it's not meant as a display to brag to other people and say, look at what I see, look what I see. And it goes on until it doesn't become about your own spiritual journey. It becomes about your advertising yourself and wanting everybody's approval. And so, in that respect, I think we have to be careful. Some of these things are meant for us to be able to grow spiritually.
Well, I think there's two extremes. You know, there's those people that are intuitives, that are sensitive to these things, and a lot of people experience these phenomena from the time they're a child all the way till they're in the latter part of their lifespan and witness these things on a regular basis. I also think that there are those individuals that are so uh, motivated to experience these kind of things that they are capable of actually manifesting phenomena, you know, actually causing these things to happen simply because they're wanting to see this thing. They're wanting to have the experience so bad. And even just like what you mentioned with the dopamine and that kind of thing, you know, people, the human mind is very uh, mysterious at times. And, but I think there is that element that where people can actually manifest some of these phenomena simply because they want to experience it so bad.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up because I had a podcaster writing with me, and he kept talking about seeing skinwalkers, and until I literally told him, that's enough. Don't be talking about that anymore. And I warned him that he was going to manifest one. And sure enough, on the trip back, after it got dark, he had one run across in front of the vehicle. And being the podcaster that he was, his camera just happened to go out 15 minutes before that he had a GoPro in the windshield. And so that ended any chance of that thing being recorded on film or on video. But
But I
he
bet
was
he was traumatized on a certain level of having that very experience that he's dying to have, you know.
he was very shook up, and in fact, we were supposed to get a outdoor fire and sit around and talk about the day, and that went out the window because there was no way he was going to go out in the dark and sit there in the middle of nowhere and subject himself to anything. So yeah.
Well, I think, you know, you and I have had the experiences where we get these producers out of Hollywood and other locations that want to come out and want to document this phenomenon, you know, right there in front of their face. And you and I have to put the brakes on those kind of things simply because you and I have had the experiences and know others that have had life threatening experiences when it comes to these types of phenomena. It's not something to be trivialized or played with, or, you know, it can be very dangerous and life threatening at times.
Right. And these things can just like the hitchhiker effect, skinwalkers can follow you and find out where you're living. And I spoke to a couple of just this last week, and the guy was saying that he there was a doppelganger, something that looked just like him, and it shook him up because it happened just like minutes before. And I happened to ask him. I says, I told him that Navajo kids, when they're little and they grow up out here, they learn not to leave hair in the brush, not to leave their toothbrush laying around, not to leave sweaty clothes out, things like that, fingernail clippings, and anything with their DNA on it. and because a shapeshifter could get a hold of it and then mimic them. And when I mentioned that, his eyes kind of got big, like, "Oh man, you know." I think from now on he's going to be a lot more careful about that kind of stuff.
Right.
But
And should
but
be.
that was just a chance encounter. But it was really enlightening, the way he talked about it.
Right. Well, again, like we had mentioned earlier, globally, there's a lot of different cultures that have references to this type of thing, and I think it's far more common than it is uncommon. I've had where one year when you and I presented up in McMinnville, Oregon, and I went down to breakfast and spoke to a young non-native couple who watched our program, and where we had an image that depicts one of these shape-shifting things. They said, "Oh my God, when you showed that slide, that's what we seen one time when we were out near Las Vegas." And we don't have any connection to indigenous peoples or Native American culture or anything, but we seen this thing as we were driving on one of those long stretches of highway. Their teenage daughter was sitting in the back seat, and she started screaming her head off, and they turn and look and see one of these things running by their vehicle at highway speeds, and then all of a sudden it takes a right turn and disappears off out into the desert. So I don't think it's something that you necessarily have to believe in. I think at times you just happen to be in that one place and one time to have these encounters, and it's very interesting, that subject matter.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, we carry arrowheads, we pray, we smudge ourselves, we carry bitter medicine, and we carry lightning struck tree medicine. And so, we have our ways of protecting ourselves, mainly through prayer and intent. And so you have to have that spiritual side to be able to protect yourself. Otherwise, you're open to things attacking you. And believe me, Stan can attest to being attacked. Um, we finished a conference in Tucson one time, and he said it felt like somebody stuck a knife in the back of his head and started twisting it around, and then the same thing in his back. And we actually had met a guy over there that was a spiritual healer, and he worked on Stan and was able to correct that. But yeah, I've never seen Stan in so much pain before, until he hurt himself on his ear, and that was the second time I've seen him in that much pain. But
Well, I think, John, again, you and I have tried to convey to people, and especially non-natives, that this isn't something to be played around with or toyed with. It's rooted in a dark or black magic, and its purpose and intent is to harm others, and it's not something to be taken lightly.
yeah, and we've seen the result of people that have had encounters with them, and I don't wish that on anybody. So we ask people as a public service announcement, don't watch a lot of these. These videos are out there of other people that have since come forward and are talking about it, and they make it sound exciting. They make it sound like this is a game, because they don't have the true experience of having to deal with this stuff. They haven't seen what the results are from encounters. And so they're encouraging people, hey, go out, and it's like being a ghost hunter. Go out and have fun, and get excited and scream a little bit, and especially around Halloween. But in the case of the shapeshifters, they can be extremely dangerous, and they can mimic voices. They can sound like people or they can sound like somebody that needs help, to draw you in. Um, and they can zip around so fast, they can be behind you in no time. And they can look like a whole bunch of different animals. So we would ask you not to go look for them. Just leave them alone. Um, and hopefully they'll leave us alone.
Well, yeah, and you and I have tried to convey that message over the years, based within our experiences. And again, like we said, there are a lot of different Native American and First Nations peoples, and even those cultures in Mexico that have these versions of these kind of things. And it's something to be taken seriously and not messed with.
Yeah, we've been contacted by people in Australia, the Aborigines, that say they have versions of it. Uh, I understand there's versions in Africa, in Asia, just literally all over the world.
All over the world.
And so, but the Canadian experience was amazing until I got sick, and then it wasn't so amazing.
Yeah.
So the plague spread around there, and everybody got sick. But we're getting better, and survived another bout of illness, and that comes with traveling. So.
Yeah. Well, I think you and I are always open to traveling and to experiences, and I think with Bill, I think he's saying our time is about up. So, so I would like to personally say thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you for Michelle being a part of this, and I think it was a really good show. Thank you, John, for getting in and being a part of it. And do you have any last comment, John?
Yeah, thank you for all the people that tuned in or that will tune in, and just have
be
a great
safe
day
out there
and be safe. Yeah.